Hello and welcome to Pockenrop. In today's video I'm going to tackle a ranking of the 15 studio albums released by the rock band Queen. I own the majority of these albums, but I own them in a format that would be very dull to show, which is this, the hefty Queen Complete Works vinyl box set. This contains everything up to the works, plus Live Killers and a exclusive album called Complete Vision. I'm not going to show you what's inside because there's not much point, but I will be using the highly useful book that came with it to show you the front covers of the albums that are contained within this box. So as ever, I have used PubMeeple to create my ranked list. So let's dive in at number 15 with what I suspect will be on most people's bottom end of their lists, 1982's Hot Space. It's a mess. The songs are not great. There are some positive gems on here, as there are on any Queen album. But the whole album is overshadowed by the brilliance that is Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie. Las Palabras de Amor's all right. Put Out the Fire's okay. But okay isn't good enough for a band of Queen's quality. And Hot Space is a poor, terrible mess of an album. And it's comfortably my number 15. At number 14, I no longer own this album, but it's the sound of a barrel being scraped. It is Made in Heaven, the final hodgepodge thrown together album that came out after Freddie died. That's not to say there aren't some good stuff on here. Heaven for Everyone's a really good track. However, that was originally done by The Cross, which is Roger Taylor's side project. So it's a rehash of that. There are a few good tracks on there like Love Kills. Although, again, it's a rehash of a Freddie solo track. I saw a review that said that Made in Heaven was cheap and tacky, but Freddie would have probably loved it. It's about right. Made in Heaven, number 14. And number 13, and in some ways I feel a little bit bad putting it this low on the list, the debut album, Queen. There's much on this album that you can enjoy, but there's not a lot that I would say I love, with perhaps the exception of Liar and definitely Keep Yourself Alive, which is a standout song. I don't like the songs Great King Rat. I don't like the song Jesus. Seven Seas of Rye is interesting, but only because it's a proto version of the real song that we got a year later. There is quality on this album, but it's patchy and it's not one I return to very often. So my number 13, the debut album, Queen. At number 12, I have placed the soundtrack from their first film that they scored, which was Flash Gordon. It's a film soundtrack. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's very little what you would call classic Queen on here. Football Fight, written by Mercury, is a great piece of music. It's riddled with synthesizers throughout the album, which up until the album directly before this, they had always proudly proclaimed they didn't use. The title track, Flash, is better served by the greatest hits, where you've got all the film dialogue on it, rather than just the plain song, where it comes across as incredibly dull. And the only other song on here is The Hero, which is fine. All the rest of it is film soundtrack music, so it's instrumental, which means you can enjoy it, but it's very atypical for a Queen album. My number 12, the Flash Gordon soundtrack. So at number 11, I have placed their other soundtrack album, but it's not a soundtrack album, A Kind of Magic. An album of really high highs and some really low lows. So within that album, we've got great stuff like One Vision, the title track, A Kind of Magic, and possibly the best thing on it at the very end, Princes of the Universe. But between those is a mix of an up and down of poor stuff like Pain Is So Close to Pleasure, which I can't abide. Friends Will Be Friends, which I used to really like, but now when I listen to it, I think this is just a generic pop song almost. Who Wants to Live Forever, which is a beautiful theme, really good in the context of the movie, but feels a bit boring. And then you've got a few other tracks that are kind of almost from the soundtrack, like Kurgan's theme, Give Me the Prize, or Don't Lose Your Head, which isn't about the head chopping from the film Highlander. It's an album that really blows hot and cold, and for me, it misses the top 10 Queen albums as a result. My number 11, A Kind of Magic. Into the top 10, and at number 10, I have got The Works. Now, The Works is in many ways similar to The Game in the fact that the singles on here are what really stands out. We have Radio Gaga, I Want to Break Free, It's a Hard Life, and Hammer to Fall. But the non-single tracks, by and large, fall a bit flat on their faces. The deep cuts are not deep enough. Machines or Back to Humans. Keep Passing Open Windows. The one exception being the rather beautiful Is This the World We Created, which concludes the album. The Works feels like an album that was commercially devised. It was devised to get hits after the flop that Hot Space had been. And in that, it succeeded. As an album, it doesn't quite. And that's why The Works is my number 10. At number 9, I've placed an album that many Queen fans would put very high up. Some would even say it might even be the most important album that Queen released. And it is 1974's Sheer Heart Attack. The reason I don't get on with this album is that it is literally an album of two sides. The first side, where we have that 6-song run of Brighton Rock, Killer Queen, Tenement Funster, Flicker the Wrist, Lily of the Valley, and then Now I'm Here, I could listen to any time. That is a fantastic side of music. Side 2 is a very different matter, and I just don't get on with it. There are individual positive points in it, like John Deacon's first song, Misfire, the all-band co-write of Stone Cold Crazy, but the rest of it can go hang. And that includes the In the Lap of the Gods Revisited, which they were playing right up until they stopped touring. But I've never liked that song particularly. And the thing that really kills the album for me is Bring Back That Leroy Brown, which I loathe. Maybe I need to go back and re-listen to it, but Sheer Heart Attack Side 2 wrecks my experience of the whole album, and that's why I've placed it at number 9. At number 8, I've placed an album that has so many different musical styles on it that it's hard to keep track of, and it's 1978's Jazz. This is an album that I think really marks the transition period from what we call classic Queen era into the pop single focused Queen era. Fat Bottom Girls is fantastic. Don't Stop Me Now is one of the best pop songs you will ever hear, and certainly amongst the greatest songs that Queen ever wrote. But the rest of the album doesn't quite hit the mark. There were good stuff on here like Jealousy and In Only 7 Days, Let Me Entertain You. But there's too much on the album that's filler. And maybe that's my problem with Jazz, is that there's too much on Jazz that could have been cut to make a tighter, more focused album. Just as listening to jazz can sometimes be a exercise in where the heck are you going next, it's a great title for the album. So that's my reasoning for number 8 being Jazz from 1978. At number 7, I have placed another album that is a frustratingly uneven listen, and it's The Miracle from 1989. This is a bit like Sheer Heart Attack in that it's an album of two sides. So side 1 kicks off with Party. I know not everybody likes that, but I think it's a good way to kick off the album. Then we have Khashoggi's Ship. That's actually quite good fun. Then we have the title track. Now, it's a great song, but I blow hot and cold. Sometimes I think the lyrics are a bit lame, but I really enjoy the sound of it, and the video was phenomenal for The Miracle. I Want It All, which is possibly the best thing on the entire album, and it was the lead-off single. And then it concludes with The Invisible Man, which is a good pop single. Flip on to side 2, however, and whilst Breakthrough is amazing, the next 3 tracks are either forgettable or downright awful. So Rain Must Fall is one of those forgettable. Scandal was a bad choice for a 4th single. And then My Baby Does Me, which is utter garbage. I loathe it. And it's actually what pulls the whole album down the ranking. I used to really like The Miracle, and then I remember how much I dislike My Baby Does Me. It does, however, conclude with Was It All Worth It? Which is an interesting conundrum for the album. Is the album worth it? For that track, it is worth it. And so it earns its place slap bang in the middle of my top 15 rankings. Number 7, The Miracle. At number 6, having mentioned jazz as a transition album, we come to the point at which the transition has been completed. And at number 6, I have placed The Game from 1980. So what I see as that transition point is synthesizers. So up to this album, they did not use synthesizers and proudly proclaimed as such. On The Game, they changed tack and started to use them. Now, that's not to say they didn't have great results with them. We wouldn't have something like Radio Gaga without them using synthesizers. But at the same time, there was a shift in their release pattern. So up to and including The Game, they released 2 singles per album at most. From The Game onwards, they were releasing 4+. And it reflects perhaps that there was a greater chasing after chart placement success. So The Game has 4 singles. There is Crazy Little Thing Called Love. There is Save Me, which is my favourite track off the entire album. Play the Game, which is a good pop single. And Another One Bites the Dust, which I really dislike. But I know why it was a hit. And similar to The Works, the problem with this album is not in the singles, it's in the deeper cuts. We have another track on here, Don't Try Suicide, similar to Keep Passing the Open Windows. This is very much a precursor to The Works. It's better executed, but this marked the point at which they were starting to get disco inflected. The son of this album is Hot Space, which you already have heard me say how much I detest. And as a result, knowing that the natural progression from something like Another One Bites the Dust was Hot Space makes me like the album less. I'm that capricious. The Game got some great stuff on it, and Save Me is beautiful, but it's my number 6. Into the top 5. And if you were to say that 11 to 5 were middling to poor, and 6 to 10 really sit in the good but not great category, then the top 5 are all great. And at this point on, every album on here I think is almost without flaw. And at number 5, I have placed A Day at the Races. It kicks off with Tie Your Mother Down. We have Millionaire Waltz, another great song contribution from John Deacon in You and I, and Roger Taylor's song, Drowse, I think's a very appropriate title for how it sounds. It also has Somebody to Love on it, which is one of their very best singles. I'm less keen on Tio Toriati, which concludes the album. I haven't even mentioned Good Old Fashioned Loverboy, which was their lead-off track for the EP. A Day at the Races is a really fine album. It's a great album, actually, and it's my number 5. Sneaking ahead at number 4 is The News of the World. This album is often maligned by fans and by critics as being the point at which Queen stepped over into excess. It isn't. It's actually quite a tightly focused album. The excess came with jazz. News of the World is a great rock album. We kick off with We Will Rock You. There's We Are the Champions, two songs that need no introduction these days. Two great contributions from Taylor in Fight From the Inside and Sheer Heart Attack. Two from John Deacon. He gives us the wonderful Spread Your Wings, which really should have been a hit, and Who Needs You. And of course, May and Mercury provide their usual contributions. Brian May gives us It's Late, which is the best thing on here. And Freddie gives us My Melancholy Blues at the end, which is actually a really beautiful song, very underrated. What stops this, perhaps making the top three, is Get Down, Make Love, which opens side 2 and is crap. It's awful. I can't stand it. But the other 10 tracks on the album are so good that I can forgive one clear clunker. News of the World, a worthy number 4 in my opinion. At number 3, I've placed an album that it is hard to listen to without a tinge of sadness. It's their final studio album while Freddie was alive, Innuendo, a number 1 hit album in the UK, trailed by the title track as a number 1 hit song. Innuendo is a brilliant final statement from Freddie Mercury and Queen. It contains the aforementioned title track. There's some great rockers on here like Headlong and I Can't Live With You. There is some forays into daft, almost ridiculous music hall like I'm Going Slightly Mad. Very odd choice for a single, I have to say, although a really good video. And Delilah, an ode to his cat. But an album that opens with the title track as a number 1 hit single and closes with a beautiful farewell statement in The Show Must Go On. What a song. Has got so much going for it. It's also got another number 1 hit on here, which I haven't mentioned yet. And that's These Are the Days of Our Lives. Okay, it got number 1 on the strength of the double A side with Bohemian Rhapsody, released in tribute to Freddie. But it's a really fine album. This is the 1991 vinyl, which means that some of the tracks are shortened. I'm quite happy about the fact that Bijou is shortened, but Innuendo is just a really, really good album. And I think it is Queen's 3rd best album. At number 2, I have placed almost a career-defining statement. Night at the Opera. A great album, contains Bohemian Rhapsody, which overshadows everything on it if we're really honest. But what it overshadows is itself also great stuff like Death on Two Legs, Seaside Rendezvous, a bit of music hall from Freddie, You're My Best Friend from John Deacon, his first songwriting single, got to the top 10. Prophet Song. Now, that divides people somewhat. Love of My Life, an absolutely beautiful ballad by Freddie that they were singing again right until their end of their touring days. Night at the Opera, for many, is the greatest Queen album. But it's not my greatest Queen album. And for that, we need to head back a year to the beginning of 1974 for Queen 2. This, for me, is the real Queen defining statement. Everything that made Queen great is on this record. Side A was called The White Side, and it was all of May and Taylor contributions. Kicks off with Procession, followed by Father to Son, which is a great song, White Queen as it began. Then we've got Someday One Day and Taylor's contribution of Loser in the End. It's a great side of rock music. But the black side, side 2, is all written by Freddie, and it's woven together as a suite. Kicking off with Ogre Battle, which wasn't quite ready in time for the first Queen album, but would have enhanced it. Fairy Fella's Masterstroke, which is just ridiculous and fantastic. Kicks into Nevermore, a beautiful song. It's about 1 minute and 30 seconds long. Does not overstay its welcome. And in fact, it's a song I'd like more of. I think Nevermore is beautiful. That gives way to March of the Black Queen on the black side. We've had the White Queen, we now we've got the Black Queen. And that's kind of like a proto Bohemian Rhapsody. It's a stitched together song, and you can hear the genesis of Bo Rap in that. And then he concludes that stitched together medley with Funny How Love Is. And then right at the end is their first hit single, Seven Seas of Rye, the full version, this time with lyrics. Queen 2, my number 1, and probably the only Queen album that I would change nothing on. So that concludes my ranking of the 15 Queen studio albums. Let me know what you think. Make some comments. How would you have ranked them? Actually, are there albums on there that I have given short shrift to that you think are great? Please let me know in the comments. Please remember as well to like the video. Remember to subscribe, and please tell other people so that this channel will start to grow a bit. And ring the bell so you can get those notifications. But until next time, thank you very much for watching.